Aloha everybody, it is I, the Great Clement, and today we're going to be playing a fantastic Super Nintendo game, one of the Super Nintendo launch titles, in fact. And if you want some even better personal trivia, this was actually the second game I've ever owned my whole life. My first video game I ever owned was Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. It wasn't the first game I ever played, but it was the first game I ever owned, played it to death. And Super Castlevania 4, I also played the hell out of this thing when I was a kid, and it's still my favorite Castlevania in the whole entire series. Still my favorite in the whole entire series, and there's so many reasons why. It's not just nostalgia backing me up, although it is the second game I've ever owned, so it's a pretty big part of my childhood. But a lot of people were a little bit peeved I didn't do Symphony of the Night quite like they wanted me to. You know, I got to the end credits. It's not my fault I could have gotten to the end credits as fast as I did. And I'm sorry I took the easy way out, but it's not a game I was familiar with, you know? It's not one of my personal favorite Castlevanias. It's a good game, and I still like it, and people act like I don't like it, but I do like Symphony of the Night. But Super Castlevania 4 is something special, ladies and gentlemen. Super Castlevania 4... it is the pinnacle of what I think a Castlevania game should have been from the get-go, from all the series, you know? I think there is one thing I don't really like about the Castlevania series, is that how they made all the Belmonts really limited in abilities, in movement, and in my honest opinion, I thought Simon Belmont in this game, Super Castlevania 4, was the best handling a Belmont should ever have been, and it never ever reaches this level of detailed, you know, movement. You never feel quite as precise as you do in the future games. They went back to the archaic, you know, you swing your whip in one direction, basically. Whereas in this game, you could swing your whip in tons of directions. You could swing it up, you could swing it diagonally, you could swing it diagonally while you're jumping. You felt like you had complete control of the whip in this game, and you always feel like a badass. The thing that really sets games apart for me, and what makes it such a perfect game to me, is control. I just recently named Batman Arkham City my Game of the Year for 2011. It's now 2012, and part of what made Batman so satisfying was that you felt like you were in control of Batman, you felt like you could beat the fuck out of anyone in the whole goddamn world, and it would be no effort, and you were just this badass. When I play Super Castlevania 4, I feel like a fucking badass. When people tell me, what's your favorite Belmont, Clement? I go, favorite? There's only one Belmont, and his name is Simon Belmont, motherfuckers. Oh sure, the other guys are Belmonts in name, but Simon Belmont is the Belmont. Anywho, that's the opening crawl. You know the story of Castlevania. Big bad Dracula comes back every 100 years, and so does his castle, Castlevania. And every time he does, a person in the Belmont clan has to go over to his castle and take him out. Does it have to be a Belmont? Well, not really, but they seem to be pretty good at this, I guess. I guess they're the only ones who pass down their heritage and their fighting skills to, you know, future Belmonts down the road. But here we go, beginning the game. Here is Simon Belmont's prowess. You can aim your whip in pretty much every direction. Diagonally up, wherever. That makes controlling Simon such a thrill. It's so great playing as him. He can actually twirl his whip around if you hold on to the whip button, and it's great for actually deflecting enemy projectiles that come your way, and it's just really fun to, like... It's almost like a little virtual yo-yo, you know? Sometimes it's just fun just to play around with that as Simon Belmont. I don't know why, just twirling the whip around is so fun to me. And yes, he can moonwalk, because Simon Belmont's a fucking badass. And if you're holding the up button while moving in the opposite direction, I guess the game just programmed it that way, where, like, he'll still be facing right, but because you're pushing up, he's still going up the stairs. And, that's always fun. So we're heading to Castlevania. There's no turning back. The drawbridge. Sorry, Simon, but, you chose to go in here. You want to stop Dracula? Well, that was your call. We're gonna have to go and save the day. Oh, another thing about Super Castlevania 4 that makes this such a fantastic fucking game, the soundtrack. Oh my god, this is 16-bit perfection. I can't believe this was a launch title on the Super Nintendo. This is bliss. Listen to Simon Belmont's theme. Oh god, this game is fucking awesome. Oh man, the soundtrack in this game, I gotta be honest, it's one of the best soundtracks in video gaming, and it may be 16-bit, it may be a video game soundtrack, but some of the pieces in this game are downright beautiful, honestly. Like, beautiful, I'm not kidding. Some of the songs in this game are incredibly well composed, and I'll probably talk about every song when I get to them. But here we are at Super Castlevania 4. Again, moving the whip in any direction you want is awesome. The skeleton bone dragon thing there, he shoots fireballs at you. You can actually hold out your whip by holding the B button. Or is it the Y button? I'm sorry, I haven't played a Super Nintendo controller in a long time. But you hold the Y button and he'll hold the whip out and the fireballs will actually be destroyed by the whip. So that's always fun. Oh, another thing Super Castlevania 4 does well, you're allowed to swing off of these hanging rings sometimes, and my god, is that a thrill too. So many Castlevania games just didn't bring back what made Super Castlevania 4 so fun, and I think that's blasphemy. Here I'm just showing off, jumping from ring to ring because I can, because it's so fucking fun! I love this game! And then I got hit. I'm lucky I didn't fall into that pit. But yeah, you can use those rings to swing from crevice to crevice. It makes you feel like Indiana Jones, you know? It's just fucking badass. So constantly throughout the game are these candlesticks which contain hearts. Hearts is basically your ammo for whatever your sub-weapon is. And whatever your sub-weapon is whatever you pick up. Right now I'm holding on to the axe. When you push the R button... Oh, this is another thing that was different about Super Castlevania 4 as opposed to the other Castlevania games. In the other Castlevania games, you have to push up and then the attack button in order to use your sub-weapon. In this game, they added it to the R feature, which I fucking love! But the axe, you throw it, it goes up in the air and it lands somewhere far away. The holy water, you throw directly at the ground and it burns fire for like 2-3 seconds. It can actually fuck up a boss pretty badly if he's stuck on it for a while. So, you know, holy water's always swell. Throughout the levels are constantly going to be breakable walls that contain pieces of chicken, pieces of heart. One thing contained the Roman numeral 2 and the Roman numeral 3. And what those do, I believe they reduce the amount of hearts it takes to use your sub-weapon, if I'm remembering it correctly. Here is the stopwatch. You push the stopwatch and... well, time stops. Chaos control, basically. And good old Medusa heads, you sons of bitches. You're not so bad in this game, honestly. Maybe later in some of the later levels, but right there, were the Medusa heads that much of a problem? Nah, not really. If you're twirling the whip like that instead of doing a full-out swing for enemies, it's not going to do as much damage as a normal swing would. Like, if you swing at an enemy, it might kill the skeleton in one hit. If you hold out the whip, it'll probably take like 4 or so hits for the skeleton to die. So, you know, it can deflect lasers and fireballs and stuff pretty well, but don't rely on holding the button out to destroy enemies quickly. And now we come to the first boss of the game, a really creepy skeleton horse warrior guy. Once the skeleton horse is dead, he just tries to swing at you, and he's pretty slow. It's the first boss of the game, so if you die to this guy, well, maybe you should just drop the controller and kill yourself. Okay, I don't want to go that dark, but it's pretty easy, so you shouldn't die too badly. Another great thing about the Castlevania series, especially this one, because there's so many animations to Simon Belmont because of all the directions he can swing and everything. When you grab the big red ball at the end of every stage, the game freezes. It freezes on whatever your character was doing when he picked up the red orb. So I always like to end these levels by trying to put Simon in particular poses. It's a sexual fetish of mine. Not really. I'm straight, and, you know... maybe if it's a woman Belmont, maybe. So anywho, now we're in level 2, the graveyard area. We're not actually in the castle area of Castlevania quite yet. I mean, we're in that general area, but we're not actually inside the castle. The thing about Super Castlevania 4 chronologically in the story is that this is actually supposed to be a reimagining / remake of the first game, Simon, like a Castlevania 1. It doesn't use the same levels, the level design is completely different, there are new areas and stuff. But apparently in Japan, like according to the Japanese text or whatever, this is a remake of 1. Like this is just a retelling of 1 again. The opening in Super Nintendo doesn't say that. In the opening of Super Nintendo says that Simon Belmont has once again come back to stop Dracula, because he was the hero of 1, he was the hero of 2, and here he is back again for 4, so I guess they just wanted to make it simple and not adapt to the Japanese way of saying, like, it's a remake, because kids wouldn't understand it. They'd just be like, well, we're playing Simon again, right? Why don't... What? So wait, it's a remake of the first game? What? You know, it's just much easier to say it's a sequel than it is a remake, and like it really matters. I mean, Simon Belmont kills Dracula, the end. Oh wait, spoiler! It's just a fantastic game all around. I just love doing crazy stuff like that, where, like, not the bats, but the bird enemies are so weak that you can just hold out your whip, and if they run into it, they'll die, because I guess they're not really thick-skinned, but, and the frogs. Oh, the frogs. They're small, but they jump far, so you gotta watch out for those motherfuckers. Like I said before in Symphony of the Night, a lot of small enemies can kill the Belmonts for some reason. You could have a table come to life, and it can kill you. You can have a small little frog come and kill Simon Belmont. It's pretty fucked up. I'm just imagining Dracula in his throne room, and then one of his skeletons comes up to him, and he's like, "Guess what, Dracula? Simon Belmont is dead! He has failed!" Excellent. What destroyed him? The frog in the swamp area! Really? He died in the swamp area? Really? I swear to you, Dracula, he died because he got killed by the frog! What is a man? A miserable fucking idiot who can't beat a frog! But enough talk. Have Medusa! So this is the Medusa boss. If you have the cross boomerang, it's so fucking easy. Yeah, that's it. But, you know, it was nice to see Medusa anyway. The cross boomerang is another sub-weapon. Basically, you throw it, it goes in a certain direction, it comes back to you. So, it's pretty good for taking out Dracula mostly in every other Castlevania game, like the final boss fight. And, it's just a nice boomerang weapon that goes forward and comes back. It's all swell. That potion I just picked up right now makes me invulnerable for a short period of time. It's basically the Starman of this series. Another thing I gotta mention right off the bat is that Simon Belmont, like Mega Man, will die immediately if he touches spikes. There's no... Oh, he loses like 3 or so health. No, if he touches spikes at all, Belmont is dead. So, that's the one thing you really gotta watch out for in Super Castlevania 4. If you see spikes, make sure you're jumping properly, make sure you're not jumping into them, because this river area actually has spikes sticking out from the walls sometimes, and if you jump the wrong spot, you'll jump into them and actually cut your head a little, and kill yourself. So, you know, don't do that. I really like this map feature thing. It shows you what you're going to be going through, and if there's a boss in the level. Because sometimes there's not always a boss in the level, and as you saw from the Stage 2 map, we passed through the boss and kept going. And when we played Stage 2, Medusa was not the end of the boss. We cleared Medusa, then we went through the river. Fun stuff. Again, those spikes, those green spikes that I just passed, they are deadly. Touch them once, and you will die. Here are the Mudmen. The Mudmen turn into smaller Mudmen when you smash them, but really, it's not so bad. You just keep smashing and smashing, and duck to smash when they get tinier and tinier. Pretty easy. A big complaint a lot of die-hard Castlevania fans might have about Super Castlevania 4 is that it's one of the easier games in the series, but I don't think it's an easy game per se. I think it's just the right challenge. I mean, when I'm a 4-year-old, believe me, Super Castlevania 4 fucked me up on occasion. Sometimes I would die due to spikes. Sometimes I would die to Medusa, you know. When you're a kid, this shit is fucking challenging as hell. And yeah, it doesn't hold a candle to Castlevania 1's death battle, or some of the bullshit they make you go through in Castlevania 3, but honestly, I always thought the Castlevania NES games were a little bit too hard for their own good. You know, it took some pretty intense pattern recognition, and you always have to come in prepared with specific sub-weapons, but this is a game that, it's not easy per se, it gets a lot harder in the later levels, believe me. You'll see, I die a few times in this playthrough, but it's never like ridiculously easy. It's still a great challenging game. It's just, it's taken away all that, you know, forced memory, my god, there's too many enemies on screen, what the fuck, bullshit of the old games. And then Dracula X and Rondo of Blood kind of return to that. I mean, if you like the more challenging Castlevania games, that's all well and good, but I always thought this was just a right enough challenge. And it's all about the control of Simon Belmont. What makes it such an easy game in comparison to the other games is just how much control you have over Simon. You feel like a fucking badass. Is it really that the game's easy, or is it just that we're a fucking overpowered god boss who Dracula should be shaking in his boots right now about? Because Simon Belmont's coming to get you, Dracula. He's coming to get you. Anywho, folks, that's it for part 1. I will see you in part 2.